It's now demanding to be part of any future security guarantees for Ukraine, a clear non-starter. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reports that the Pentagon has quietly blocked Ukraine from using U.S.-made long-range missiles to strike targets deep within Russia. In response, President Zelensky says Ukraine no longer consults the U.S. on such strikes, adding they use their own domestically produced weapons. Let me now bring in former U.S. Air Force Assistant Vice Chief of Staff, retired Lieutenant General Richard Newton, NewsNation's senior national security contributor. Lieutenant General, always good to have you. What do you make of the Pentagon reportedly blocking Ukraine from using these long-range missiles at a time when the White House is trying to woo Putin to the negotiating table with Ukraine?
Well, good morning, Marky. I'm actually from the Admiral Hotel here in Copenhagen, Denmark, and getting a perspective of the Europeans regarding the current fight as well as the negotiations. It's really, you've got some disconnect, I believe, perhaps in the Trump administration, where you have President Trump making pronouncements about the need for offensive forces, if there's going to be any chance at all for victory or perhaps a settlement. And then you have a policy inside the Pentagon that's restricting the use of, say, Army tactical missile systems and other long-range capabilities to really hold Russian targets at risk. But nonetheless, as President Zelensky said, with his Ukrainian-made capabilities, there's really no consultation with the United States, although he pays very close attention to the United States and so forth. But and all the while, Putin is still trying to stonewall the administration, President Trump. There's no progress there, making maximalist demands. So that's where we are at this very moment.
Yeah, and not to mention that one of Russia's recent strikes and targets was an American factory, overseas. So how is Zelensky supposed to, stop the war, go on the offensive if, the brakes are being pumped against him?
Well, it's like one arm tied behind his back, much like we saw in the prior administration. I don't really think that's going to be President Trump's intent here. What I would advise our president, and as well as for supporting Ukraine, there's two things. Very strong sanctions and tariffs against those who are purchasing Russian oil, as well as the United States increasing offensive forces capability, or military capabilities to Ukraine, and then reviewing that Pentagon policy with regard to keeping a lid on the use of those U.S.-provided or European-provided long-range capabilities. That's the only thing Putin understands is power, and it's at this point that really we're at a critical phase where Putin's not going to give up. He's got major demands here still on the table. He wants to take away Ukrainian military capability. He wants no NATO, allowed no NATO for Ukraine to join NATO. And the third aspect of this, he wants to give up territory, particularly in the Donbass region. That should not happen. It cannot happen. And that's where we are. We're stonewalled. Therefore, the only thing Putin understands is he's going to continue to strike against Ukrainian people. We saw that with this American technical facility that was attacked. And so Putin's sending a message here that he's not giving up at all. And I think President Zelensky in Ukraine should also do the same.
Yeah, let me play some sound for you, sir. You have Vice President J.D. Vance, who just on Sunday says Russia has shown willingness to negotiate. Take a listen to what the VP said.
I think the Russians have made significant concessions to President Trump for the first time in 3.5 years of this conflict. They've actually been willing to be flexible on some of their core demands. They've talked about what would be necessary to end the war. Of course, they haven't been completely there yet, or the war would be over, but we're engaging in this diplomatic process.
Yeah, and General, Russia is now pouring cold water on any imminent Putin-Zelensky talks. And, per your points before that soundbite, how flexible is Moscow really at this point?
I think they've stiffened. However, Vice President Vance is correct. Since the Trump administration inauguration in January, we've had significant dialogue. And by the way, kudos to the President of the United States for opening up that dialogue. But now the tough part begins, Marky. This is where we get into the details. And this is where we're going to see Putin trying to put the brakes on any progress we've had to date that perhaps Vice President Vance referred to. This is where it's going to be very, the devil's in the details here. But again, bottom line is there are maximalist demands that I don't believe Putin's going to give up unless he starts feeling the pain of those sanctions, those tariffs, and especially if now Ukraine is able to go offensive in military capabilities against Russian targets, especially in their supply chain for the front lines, against their oil revenue sources and capabilities, as well as their ability to strike deeper into Russian territory. That's the only thing that Putin's going to understand and really drive him to give up some of those details that Vice President Vance talked about in negotiations.
I got to end it there, but we'll see where all of this heads next. Lieutenant General Richard Newton, thanks so much as always. Have a great day and safe travels in Copenhagen.
Thank you. Good morning, Marky.
Good morning to you.